I do this thing where I record videos of myself, but just for myself. And it is essentially a video diary. And I was looking back upon some of my videos. It's very interesting to see how I've grown, and not just within the years, but even within the months, within the weeks. And being able to have that kind of proof is actually very nice because you can excavate the truth. It is very easy for us to lie to ourselves and tell ourselves that, oh, yeah, oh, we're either not growing or, you know, things have just been eluding us, so we are not necessarily moving at full force. And those kinds of negative thoughts are going to really hamper our ability to understand that we're constantly growing, we're constantly moving, and even on those days that it feels like we're not, maybe we have indulged a little bit too much in an activity, in a bad habit that we are trying to eliminate, or maybe we're having days where we're just brimming with joy and motivation and success. We have all the right influences around us, and being able to visually dismantle the truth, seeing it firsthand, will allow you to really celebrate those wins, adding to the positivity, adding to the motivation, adding to the momentum. And so I have this habit where I just kind of talk to the camera and allow myself to maybe just blurb everything out that I can't tell people, or, play these games with myself where I'm practicing certain ways that I would like to develop myself as a person. And I think that is why a lot of us are on social media, and a lot of us are now on YouTube. We are doing the same thing, but we are doing it in public, which means there is some accountability and, not only accountability, but there's always going to be a pro and a con to everything we do in life. If you are presenting yourself to the world, that means you're going to be more likely to also be influenced by other people who are talking about the same things, hopping onto those trends, or really even just the sound of your voice, your cadence. There is a certain way that people present themselves on YouTube, and it's like, oh, we're all presenting our information, and so we have our flashcards in hand and we're ready to talk about whatever. And so really it's a matter of understanding, are we going to focus on developing ourselves, or are we going to be influenced by other people and allow that to scaffold what we already have as ourselves as we build to a newer, a better, a brighter future. So of course, this warrants being talked about because our world is shifting to being online. It has already shifted to being online. And at this point, if you're not online, if you're not creating something, then what are you doing? Because that, in a sense, is now affecting all aspects of our lives, our businesses. People want to see who you are as a person. They want to be able to see what interests you, and this allows you to create groups within the world to really reach to so many ends of the world that we didn't have access to before. And having that ability now is essentially contriving these new opportunities in order to not only build a business or build, a community for yourself, but even just developing yourself as a person, which in essence will develop your future, because we all start from that building block of number one, that once we look within ourselves, intrinsically understand what are the bottlenecks that are essentially creating friction within our lives, being able to look at that objectively and disseminate that to others if necessary, or even more necessarily to ourselves, because once we tell ourselves the truth, or if we reach out to others and ask them for help, for guidance, then we're able to really start to move forward and build this momentum. So everyone, I feel, is on YouTube or doing something online for either personal reasons, for maybe, just getting through life, or, having that kind of validation that boosts the spirits. Maybe they are just building something for themselves or for others. So having an understanding of what your intention is, and understanding what is the utility relative to yourself and to society, because there are so many videos out there, and you can have people who are going to view them and maybe not view them entirely, but just kind of going through the flow. And now we have to have these hooks and be like these crazy people who are trying to entertain, because why else would people be on the internet? They're bored, they're trying to get away from their lives, they're trying to learn something, and there's this unrelenting influence of push from society telling the entertainers on YouTube to be a certain way. And so when you do put yourself out there, you have to either fight the wave, or you have to clarify to yourself what you would like to do and where you draw the line and what is your intention. So being able to clearly discern whether or not you even want to be online, whether you want to protect your privacy, or whether you want to benefit from the rewards of putting yourself out there. Because of course, when you stretch yourself, you're going to find a lot of opportunity, and not necessarily economically, but even just intrinsically within yourself, and so on and so on. And so we've really been able to talk about all these things within society that are favorable to self-development and are definitely legitimate, but have been drummed into people's heads because of the trends of the internet, telling us that, hey, it's time to become consciously aware and focus on hustle mentality so that we can encompass whatever success means to us. But also don't forget that we also need to have a balanced approach and blah, 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 so you're always going to hear this chitter chatter from every angle of the internet. And it's interesting because, yes, there's a lot of truth to what everyone is saying, because everyone has their own truth. Everyone has a very different experience, and your adversity is going to determine whatever you feel gravitated towards and what is going to help you move through your adversity. And so when you have this reservation to share and you want to remain private, and so you do end up posting things for yourself and just for yourself, but then you also realize that, if you don't try something, you never know what's going to happen. And every single shot that you take, even without the understanding of what the cause is, what the consequence or ramifications might end up being. Maybe it might be nothing, maybe it might lead to something you hadn't imagined, but if you don't take that shot, you cannot dispel the notion that that activity that you did was either beneficial or detrimental to your life. And so being able to explore and try new things is very important, because that is where the brink of creativity lies. Being giving yourself the opportunity, freeing yourself, and essentially giving yourself permission to try new things, to create a debacle of yourself and laugh at it later on, but also realize that this is the beginning of your success. And it doesn't matter who is going to follow you, it doesn't matter who wants to be, they feel inclined to be a part of your story because it resonates with some part of their story. It doesn't matter, because when you do things, you need to do everything for yourself. And so when you start to expose yourself to others, it is very easy to essentially feel like you're all over the map, because there's so much diversity and there's so much opportunity to become so many things. And when you stretch yourself, you essentially allow yourself the opportunity to explore different avenues that maybe did not feel like it was you in the past. And so, it's not your prerogative to be judgmental of yourself. You need to essentially pull away from that and create a framework in your brain that you are a flexible human being, because that is the essence of life, being able to try on different hats and growing in ways that stipulate building new friendships, building new environments, building new mentalities, demonstrating to yourself through actions that contribute to your self-image, that you are scaffolding in maybe a direction other people are trying to build, or maybe that you are learning to control and build yourself. And so that's another issue that people have, because maybe it's not the internet. Maybe there are people in your life that have such a great influence on your character and essentially your destiny, your habits, your character, your destiny, your future. And so when you begin to break that down and you can dissipate that impact on yourself by either creating boundaries or, stretching life so that you add novelty and being able to explore those. And when you do, then you're getting away from other things. Maybe you're not able to physically leave. So finding places that would allow you a safe space to explore being a different character. And it's very underrated because people are afraid to just all of a sudden out of nowhere try something new, but that is how you build something different. You have to recognize that we get stuck in this mundane, and people are used to consistency. Our brains like consistency. And so when we know what another person is going to do or how they're going to speak, what is their cadence, what is their emotion, their library of emotions and behaviors, then it makes us feel safe, because we can determine the kinds of reactions that we might have. And in essence, that allows us to control other people, to control our environment. But there's also it's necessary to be able to pull back from that as well, and be able to feel the freedom to try different things. And some people will judge you, put you down, be like, hey, that didn't work, that's not you. But okay, you tried it once, you had a reaction, maybe you had an opposite reaction, people loved it, and so that kind of validation will make it easier in the future to implement those behaviors. But if people didn't love it, try it in a different environment. And if people respond neutral or positively, then hey, now you can start to build that, and your muscle memory will start to implement that into those environments that were not as receptive. And so, really understanding how your brain is wired and how others are also wired so that you can navigate your personal journey of self development and really implement strategies that become a function of pursuing your version of excellence and not that of others. So, of course, it's going to be easy to, imagine it in your head and be like, maybe it's not so easy. But, that could be the first thing as well. If you don't have a safe environment around you, then maybe the safe place is in your head. And so you just start to imagine yourself as that person, which can actually be pretty hard because even our brains have such strong resistance. It's baffling to understand that a lot of the ceilings, a lot of the glass ceilings are within our brains. And so once we can shatter those, we start to program our brains for success. And sometimes we can't pursue things in the way that we necessarily want to full force. So having this conciliatory behavior that if I can't do this, then maybe I can at least do this. And understanding, recognizing that slow progress is better than no progress. So when you do move towards whatever goals you might have and realize that it's okay to embrace imperfection. In fact, imperfection is the new perfection. And starting to put these kind of thoughts in your brain and ameliorate the negativity that is really holding you back, then maybe you won't feel like you're growing in the moment. But if you do start to record yourself, or you start to take notes, or just having some sort of record to allow yourself to truly see your growth, you might even see patterns where you are just stagnant, nothing is happening, you're just going through the motions. And then all of a sudden, abruptly, you will have a growth spurt and things are entirely different. You find yourself in this new world where, you were at the bottom and now you seem to have developed some skills, you're flowing, and you have really advanced at whatever skill you were working at. But now realize that that is the new bottom. You are now in a new world. And so maybe it might be time to take a mental check of where are you in your environment? Are you able to now shift things in a way that you might not have been able to in the past? And constantly reassessing that, you can move forward in new ways every single day, every single moment. We have choices every single moment that we need to hone in on and recognize that time is of the essence. And okay, we might indulge in those bad behaviors. We might fall back into those tropes of laziness or tropes of, whatever bad image that you're trying to fight. It's okay, because those are just popping up, but they're popping up more periodically. And so you are starting to permeate this new world again, and realizing that you've already done it in the past, that you are in essence moving like a snail, maybe in your mind, but to others, you might be moving very fast. You might be running, you might be flying. And so being able to also have that sort of gratitude and looking to not only your past, but realizing that other people are going through what you went through. And so your words matter, your experience matters. And just because another person might be judging you or putting you down, don't let that dissuade you from understanding that you are worthy of everything and anything you want in life. And you have achieved quite a bit in life, because look, there are other people who have not achieved that. Maybe they're not fortunate enough to have the kind of situation you have, even if that is just living in certain situations that are not necessarily conducive to your future success, but they have been conducive to your current success. And so recognizing that you wouldn't have been here had it not been for the turmoil and the tragedy of your life, because those allow you to really see in stark contrast the embellishments within your life that, you know, it can be so easy to walk down this path of negativity and see the positive spikes, but then going back down to this level of homeostasis, feeling so convoluted. And although you have the objective in your mind, you've visualized it, but just feeling stuck, understand that other people are there with you. The whole world is there with you. Even the successful people above you are there with you. And so now it comes down to action, because you need to shift the mind to, what more can I have for myself? Why not me? Why can't I have the same success that I see in others? All it takes is diligent effort and strategic planning. Now, of course, we don't all come from the same situations. Some people, maybe they're more affluent, whether in their economy, whether in their friendship, but they are at a certain level where their circle is allowing them the ability to grow much faster. Now, what is the flip side of that coin? People who don't have that, maybe they have to work much harder. But what does that build? That builds character. And so being able to orient yourself constantly to that silver lining, to the flip side of the coin. And yes, there is a valid point in being able to say, oh, this happened to me, woe is me. And I mean, when you're going through whatever traumas that are still within yourself and that are triggering you, and so maybe you hear certain words or you smell something, and it makes your brain, not necessarily consciously, but just you start to feel a certain way, and it's not conducive to your success. So becoming cognizant of your personal triggers and allowing yourself the ability to talk about what has gone on in your life, and maybe not necessarily to the internet, but at least to yourself, maybe to a friend, maybe a therapist, someone, and just getting it out there, getting it outside of your body. This might take years and it might take days. Sometimes you just need this emotional outburst where you just cry it all out, and maybe you just need to be by yourself and have this stoic period of life, or just whatever it is you need. Every person is going to be different, but soon the darkness will go and you will acclimate to the darkness, because your night vision is going to get very strong, very powerful. And then the light eventually comes, and so you desensitize to the darkness and you become acclimated to the light. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done always within ourselves, and that kind of understanding as well that we don't know everything. There is this disproportionate amount of truth within the world that we may never even grasp. And so, because this exorbitant amount of knowledge exists, this treasure trove, there's no time to waste, because we just need to constantly be excavating and exploring and trying new situations and just experiencing everything possible in life, because we will not be able to experience every color and aspect of life. We can try, but there's just too much. And so eventually we diverge on our paths and we forfeit certain experiences and we accept others. That is the beauty of life that creates diversity. And so there's no right or wrong. It's simply just movement. Now, is there going to be societal aspects, societal conditionings of what is perceived as good and bad? Yes. How strong is that going to be? Very strong. And so now it's not necessarily moving towards that success, but creating the sphere of joy within your day-to-day that you can move towards a vision. But as you experience new things and you create this code of conduct of what you would like to do and what crosses the line for you because you tried it and it didn't feel good, but maybe you kept an open mind, you tried it again, maybe you tried something and you had a negative reaction, maybe that followed you into other areas of life. And so you have to realize that nothing is black and white, there's a lot of gray. And so when you do try something, understanding that there will be places in your life that you have grown, that you have moved away from, and now you might want to go back and explore that again. Having this kind of essentially amalgamating your experiences and creating this alchemy by touching points of this woven library of experiences within your psyche and creating this magic, because now you go back to this experience and you say, hey, that didn't work for me in the past, but now that I have this cognizance of the way the world works, I can interact more powerfully. And now this is something that I like. So you need to understand that sometimes, because you were stuck in certain dark eras and now you are moving on, you have learned to serve yourself and to serve others, to nurture yourself, to nurture others, establishing the self-care that maybe you've neglected in the past. And really just once you learn to negate the negativity of your mind and live within that circle of joy, then you become cognizant of moving forward of your time. You begin to eliminate those justifications that were time wasters and dismiss the people who are maybe negative influences, who were maybe tenacious and absorbed too much of your time, leading to the implication of you feeling stuck, not understanding why you're feeling stuck, because maybe there were too many external variables that were not allowing you to move forward. And this is very difficult because when you have these kind of confounding variables, you're not able to distinguish between what is actually good for you and what is not good for you. So you need to go through this period where you slowly remove one thing at a time and assess over time what works, what doesn't work. And having this sort of kamikaze commitment to yourself, even though, yes, it's good to give to others. And I do believe that life is about altruism, about giving to others, because when we give to others, it's actually a selfish act. We are giving to others because it makes us feel good. And I mean, that's how the world works. We are connected. Other people give to us, we give to them. There's a back and forth. Maybe it is out of unconditional love, maybe it is a transaction. And so, really having so much volatility in life, some people, they're upset about it because they feel like, oh, I want to have that stability. I want to have what my brain enjoys, which is consistency. And when we have that volatility, again, our options are expanding. So training your brain to adhere to these new ideas, which are not really new, because I mean, the world is screaming this on the internet that, hey, become aware, take action, these are the steps. We have so many remarkable people on the internet now. We have people who maybe their talents would never have been seen or heard, and societies that were becoming obsolete but now have the ability to educate others about different cultures and challenges that other people face, so that we can begin to implement this world of diversity and inclusion while challenging not only this homeostasis of our brain, but also the homeostasis of this societal consensus of where the world is. And so, of course, we're going to have the black and white, the dichotomies that are creating friction amongst each other, but it's a beautiful world that we live in because we're allowed to have that kind of variance. And maybe other people, they want to focus on the other party who is saying certain things. And of course, we are all impacted by one another. So having that awareness that our actions are affecting others, and whether we choose to act responsibly or if we're choosing to create chaos around us while putting ourselves on a pedestal, it depends on where you are, because you can put yourself on the pedestal, and you should, because you should be shining as a person. You were meant to shine, but also recognizing, and now it's more than ever easier to recognize that there are so many people showcasing their profound ability to create magic in this world. And so instead of looking at others and putting them down, we need to celebrate each other and learn from each other's. And we are doing that now that we have everything on the internet, and Instagram has turned into this place where people are posting to build these businesses based on their skills and talents, things that were unheard of in the past. Now we're moving in a very fast direction that you should just take your shot. And maybe that doesn't mean that you're going to create a business on Instagram or do whatever, but take your shot at shining in this world, because we don't know how far our ripples of our decisions are going to go. And so when we recognize that even just putting out a little smile or trying to add some positivity to someone's day, that could resonate with them, and your words are magic, and your words create power, they empower. And so when you understand the world more, especially as you grow and you experience novel experiences, then you're able to better manage your ripples. So then it comes down to either responsibility or it comes down to just not caring how you affect other people. Now the choice is yours, because as you grow in that awareness, you can choose to demolish a person, or you can choose to understand that everyone makes mistakes. There is always going to be trial and error. And without the ability to try different things and then turn around and try something else, how does a person grow? They cannot. They have to move in these various subsets of mannerisms in order to understand what is beneficial to themselves and others, and really just building this circle of not only joy but also of competence that emotionally intelligent people understand, but maybe people who were not exposed to environments with emotionally intelligent people, or people who are more likely just to stay on the surface and be able to just clearly communicate with others. But again, there's no wrong way of communicating. There might be a way that is preferred to you or others, and there might be ways that are preferred to other people as well. And so really having the ability to speak in different languages and understanding that the more arrows you have in the quiver, the more likely you're going to be able to hit the bullseye. So constantly learning and growing and admiring people, learning from people. Maybe they're selling courses, but maybe if you're not in a place to buy a course, don't buy a course. Just go watch them from far and study their mannerisms, study the people who inspire you, because now you don't need to have those people in your life. You have, before we had books and we can read these autobiographies and truly understand how the mind of a successful person is working. But now we have the internet, and now we have videos, which is such a powerful thing, because body language, facial expressions, the nuances of the eyes is very important. And so being able to master yourself and always being blissfully dissatisfied with where you are, but also happy within that circle of joy that you have come this far, and you're grateful for the environment that you have, whether good or bad, and dissatisfied that it's not enough, and that's okay. It's okay to feel like it's not enough. I mean, you should realize that you are enough, be blissful about yourself, but wanting to have more is a natural part of human nature, because we were built to evolve. And so when it comes to the topic of self-development, and with self-development pertaining to the internet, we again just have to eliminate whatever is not resonating with us, because we're going to be, gravitating towards the way we want to grow, but also recognize that you might not want to eliminate what you're not resonating with. Basically embrace what you're not resonating with as well, because you might learn something from that. So taking the time to build that mind where you can open yourself up to things that dissatisfy you, that are uncomfortable, that are boring, and acquiescing to those situations will allow you to accept others, become more enjoyable to talk to be around, to become a more knowledgeable person. And I mean, it's just the fact of life. We're always growing. And so when we begin to suspend the belief that we are nothing and that we cannot achieve, and our track record says this and the people say this, and so now this reputation is following us around, and so really it just builds and builds and builds, and it's so easy for this kind of environment to convolute your mind and take away that belief that you can achieve greatness, you can achieve anything that you want. You simply have to realize that those doors are now closed. And when you do have limitation, what happens? Creativity emerges, because you have to be more creative when there is not that much for you to do. Something is going on in the kitchen. Anyway, so basically understanding that you're not necessarily, yes, you are a byproduct of your environment, but you get to choose how you want to be a byproduct by essentially being a gatekeeper. And okay, we have the biology, there is a predisposition with the genes and whatever, but our environment is also an important factor. And so when we choose to absorb certain things and maybe, speaking it or taking action in whatever medium feels right to you. Yes, the internet is going through this revolution where now everyone is going to be an Instagram star, and it's not even about being an Instagram star now, it's just a matter about connecting with the world. Because we are human beings, we are social animals, and we were meant to connect with other social animals. And so this age of the internet, this information age, this age of knowledge is an advent to a future that we cannot even imagine, because now, although we are eliminating our privacy and we're moving into these other issues, and there's always going to be that side of the coin, but we're also building a society where people are having these social networks and this ability to feel like they belong. And that is so important, because without the feeling of belonging, people kind of just wither away and live very unfulfilling lives. Having the social network around you, it allows you, yes, it's important to be a lone wolf, to be independent, self-sufficient, but being able to build friendships with others, that you can have this sanctuary of trust. And maybe we're saying, oh yeah, friendships on the internet, they're fake, they're not like real friendships because we're not spending time with people. And yes, there's some that there's a valid truth to that point, that people are constantly on their phones now. But what about the point that we can now speak and make friends with people around the globe? We can understand their different languages, we can learn about their cultures, we might start to embody that more so when we interact with it more. And so we're discounting various sides of the coin. So now it's a matter of, what do you want to subscribe to? Are you going to subscribe to the notion of negativity, or will you embrace all positive things in life, whatever that might be to you and whatever that might be to society as a whole? So of course, it's a matter of context. Maybe society is engaging in activities that are beneficial to the human race, and maybe we have a propensity to put ourselves first, to put certain groups first, and that creates various levels of discrimination and hostility, and it correlates with just this unnecessary violence within society, which is arduous, because of course when you have conflict you have to put in an effort, versus when you love, things really just flow more freely. And so we can only hope to move towards a society where people might say that, oh yeah, it's a utopia, like nothing is perfect, but it's not perfect unless you can imagine a future like that. I mean, of course, nothing is going to be perfect, but imperfect is the new perfect. And so when we become vigilant that, yes, we might not achieve the same vision because that's normal, everyone is different, but we can garner a respect for one another. And by doing so, we can open our minds to the trajectory of our world moving towards civilizations that will thrive rather than destroy the planet. Because, of course, we are all living together on this planet, and because of that, maybe we should start to consider our actions and reassess how responsible we are, but also how entitled we feel. And of course, we should feel entitled to certain things. We should feel privileged to be living in certain types of areas. We should be feeling privileged to have shelters, to have food. You know, there's a lot of things that other people don't have. We should be privileged to be living in a state of peace. There is still war going on. There's maybe close to genocide going on. And so a lot of negative things happening. So when it comes down to looking at the microcosm of how small you are in this planet, that your suffering is valid, but also look at the suffering of other people and the suffering of other beings. So assessing what is deficient within yourself and maybe battering your brain by saying that you're unworthy, that things are not working out for you. I mean, those are first world problems, because there are other people who are having other struggles that maybe we could never imagine partaking. So now it matters to build yourself with this deliberate effort. Now, of course, there might be people who have to build the mindset first, and then there are going to be other people who are already thriving and they've now got to build a deliberate effort into thriving in various other factors of life. But, you know, there's always going to be that point of contention in your brain, whether you are succeeding at different levels or not. And your brain has this way of just having both dichotomies of what is available and a dissonance between them. So it's also a matter of being able to clarify to yourself, again, your vision, but taking swift action and not judging yourself for that swift action, because you realize that, again, there's play, but the aggregate of your movement is going to lead to your success. And so when you start to think in this manner, you become more compelled to try new things and respect your brain. And when you can respect your brain, when you start to respect your body, when you respect your well-being, yourself, then you can respect others, which a lot of people struggle to respect themselves at this point. And that's okay, because maybe they're still working through the darkness, and that takes a lot of bravery. That takes audacity to push yourself through the darkness. But once you reach the other end, before you enter a new cave of darkness, or maybe less darkness, then you're going to essentially have this skewed view, because now you have the foresight, now you have experience that allows you to extrapolate future successes and really imagine a greater future that you might not have been able to. So, with the influx of so much stimulation from these videos of the world and society in general, we have this, we're starting to build this notion of relentlessness where people, they want to really just shine and be a star because they know they can, but at the same time we're encumbered with those thoughts within our brain. And so being able to balance the two, because of course we don't want to gravitate to the other opposite end, which is maybe becoming arrogant, lacking humility. And of course, some people would like that. Maybe that is something they're trying to build within themselves. Maybe they feel like the business environment encompasses arrogance. In order to strive, you have to only care about yourself and the bottom line, whatever that might take. Maybe we have formidable companies that are giants who are not necessarily respecting their employees or looking at things in this matter, and that is, just the way of life. Unfortunately, it is the way of life. But if we can all imagine a future where we do respect one another, and maybe it's what some people might currently call being naive, but when people said the world was flat, it was naive to assume that the world was round. So really, it's a matter of, what do you want to vote for? What kind of thoughts are you going to put in your brain, which will exhibit certain actions that essentially will create votes for how society should imagine the world as. So having the ability to be versatile, but also permeate your opinions on society with the sense of autonomy, but also control, having those dialogues within yourself and your communities to understand where are the bottlenecks, and being able to disqualify the situations that are not conducive to the vision you see for yourself and the world. These kinds of larger ways of thinking is going to invoke this immense growth within the planet, which is already happening. Because look at AI now. We don't even need other people to train us on certain things. AI can teach you how to do anything. All you have to do is ask. All you have to do is have the courage to ask questions, because there is no such thing as a stupid question. And you are under no obligation to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. Quote by Alan Watts. And so now we have to realize that in this world, yes, we can build muscle and we can look and feel formidable because we've created the strength, but also it's about endurance. Because yes, you might be strong, you might be powerful, but how many people are going to move with you if you cannot maintain their visions within your vision? And so understanding the gravity of the situation, that we are always going to be merging with each other within each other's visions, and it's okay to want to be independent, but building something requires other people. And so once you realize the need for other people to build, to explore, and just create something great, yes, you can create greatness by yourself, but it takes a group effort. And even online, with the things that you share on the internet, there's the reaction of the audience, and then there's a video based on the reaction or based on something else, and there's always going to be this push and pull. Now it's a matter of what you're going to pull out of it, because There will be people who will try to undermine your success, your ideas, to deteriorate your views because they feel their views are superior and they are the paragon of excellence, or maybe you feel that and so you're trying to push your views on other people. And so, having this notion of silence as well, that we need to silently reject but also accept other people, again respecting each other, because we are contiguous to one another. We are all on the internet and we are all here face to face in person, whatever, but like our ripples are going to affect each other. And so because of those variances, we need to use discernment in planning our actions and planning maybe the actions of our children, or operating from a certain place that will allow you to thrive in whatever context you deem necessary, but also, just deviating away from whatever you don't think is necessary. So the whole point is, don't become an endangered species, because the world is moving really fast and we need to all be learning and growing. So if you are stuck, just remember that it's okay, but time to rise and shine. The world is doing this in this profound manner, and so just don't worry, because your problems, they're valid, they're not trivial. And the opacity of you viewing your problems is going to influence how you react to them. And if you allow yourself to basically have this translucence so you can see through, but also maybe have some solidarity, you know what I mean. If you Photoshop, you know what I mean. But the sheer power of understanding your own power and not allowing others to derail you is the whole process of life at this point on. And so when we conform to others, there's some goodness in that, because of course we are societies, and without certain rules or without certain laws of conformity, we might have had a lot of dangerous situations. Like, laws are in place for a reason. There are rules in classrooms, there are rules within the family, there are rules within society that are typically followed if you want to remain within that group. And so having the ability to conform is very important, but also remain individualistic, because having autonomy and agency is also important, because you just want to celebrate who you are and compound your knowledge based on whatever you feel is good, and make positive attributions to yourself, and whatever merits adjustment, go for it, and realize that we're just here on this planet. It's the human condition, and enjoy. Live in that circle of joy. So anyway, lots of fun. I enjoyed talking about the same thing over and over, because sometimes it takes repetition to really just drum it into your head. And I think especially if you're going through darkness and you feel like you need to repeat the same conversation with yourself over and over, because you seem to be gravitating towards books and videos and topics that are telling you the same thing over and over. So recognize that that is okay. And maybe you're doing that because you are basically validating that you're worthy of listening to something over and over. It's okay to repeat things over and over. That is self-care. But try something new today also, because that's good too. All right, lots of love and good vibes. Peace.